to do something. Wait, give them time. And you'll see where they end up. Some folk think that they have it all, and so they show off with their gifts and their talents. Understand that those gifts and those talents were given by whom? And why did he give them? To use in the work of the ministry. Anytime you begin to think too much of yourself, a little bit too much of the gifts and talents that you have, you're going to end up somewhere that you never planned to go. Because the old adversary, the devil, has a plan and a place specially prepared for those church members. But when you come in humility and you know that you can't do it, you don't know what to say, you don't know how to say it, you've never been trained, but God has been just good to you, and you just want to do any and everything you can in the ministry of the church, and you come with humility and genuineness, God uses such people in a mighty way. Watch what he's going to do with Moses. So God is not looking for ability. God is looking for availability. Availability. God often allows us to enter a place where we feel confident. And when we flounder and fail, we would come to our senses, and then he puts us into an area where we feel inadequate. Have you ever been there? And when we are forced to depend on him, and then we discover it, God is going to use us when we are dependent on him. If we just simply come with humility and say, God, I'm yours. Let me be your boy. That's what he's looking for. That's what he's looking for. So Moses says to God, I don't know, I still have a couple of excuses here. Moses said to God, chapter 4, verses 10 to 12. Moses said to God, oh my Lord, I am not eloquent. Now you want me to go down there to Pharaoh to talk? I am slow of speech. Acts chapter 7 and verse 22. Watch this. Acts chapter 7 and verse 22. You read the passage, you will see these words about Moses. You will see these words about Moses. Acts 7 verse 22. The Bible says that Moses was a man mighty in words and deeds. It's there in the book. And Moses says to God, God, I can't talk. Now this is becoming quite silly. But Moses' experience parallels ours quite a bit. If we are honest, let's fess up. Let's just fess up. If we are honest, we behave a lot like Moses. We behave a whole lot like Moses. Or the Lord's response to Moses in verse 11 and 12, he said, Who made your mouth? Who made your mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, and the blind? God reminds Moses, listen, man, Moses, I can snap my finger right here, right now, and not another word will ever come out of your mouth. And that's serious. You know, church, I learned that from my youth growing up in the church. I learned this lesson. When God blesses you with a gift and you're playing around with it, what happens? He tends to do what? You tend to lose it. So verse 12, God tells Moses, he says, listen, Moses, go, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what to say. You see that embedded there in the text? It's all there in the text. You see, church, we just need to be available to God. God has promised not only to be with us, he will tell us exactly what to say. He will tell us what to say. So inadequacies are not a problem for God. He made us, and he knows us inside out. God knows us the way we are. And if we just make ourselves available to him, then God can accomplish in and through us great things. I often tell of my own experience when I was a youngster growing up. I had a speech impediment, as we say. Have you ever met someone who had a stutter? You know what that is? And I couldn't string 5 words together. I couldn't string 5 words together. And every time I read this or study this or preach this, I go back to my own experience. Because as a youngster, I couldn't speak 5 words without stuttering. I can get up today and I preach an entire sermon and you have no clue that I... Because I decided a long time, I said, Lord, I just want to be your boy. God has done marvelous things. Marvelous things. And then down in verses 13 through 17, chapter 4, we find the fifth hurdle. Moses, he's still arguing. He's still arguing with God. He says to God down there, he says, God, listen, could you send someone else? Could you send someone else? As you look at the text says, oh, my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send. Could you send someone else? You know, Moses is simply telling God, no, I'm not going. I'm not going. Then the Bible says, Exodus chapter 4, verses 14, that the Lord's anger burned against Moses. Now that concerns me, church, because as a church and as an individual Christian, if and when we get to the place where we are not fulfilling God's command, God may get angry. We don't want to get there. We don't want to get there. Now, church, I have to tell you this because a lot of churches, and I don't want our church to end up in that place. Listen to what I'm going to say now. A lot of churches just simply have church. You come in, you preach to yourselves, you have dinner together, you have your social events and enjoy yourselves together. Oh, church is a wonderful place. You invite your guest speakers in to entertain you. Oh, church, we had church today. And when you add it all up, the church is not doing a thing to advance the ministry of the work. We don't want to get there. You get there God may get angry. That's what happened to Moses. Moses is refusing to trust God's answer. When Moses begs God to send someone else, he's in effect telling God, I don't trust you. And this angers God. You see, God accommodated Moses' lack of faith. And God chose to send Aaron along with Moses to do the talking. Now let's fast forward a little bit. Moses is up on the mountain. God calls him up to get those 10 commandments. He leaves Aaron in charge of the people. Moses comes back down with those 10 commandments, and what does he find? They have built a golden calf. Aaron has supervised the project. God's perfect will is always better than God's permissive will. It's perfect will, always better than God's permissive will. Understand, there is a work, and maybe I'll show you that slide this afternoon, Christian service. I don't recall the numbered page, but God has a work for each of us to do. He has a work for each of us to do. The question is, what are you doing in church? What are you doing here? Why am I here? Are we here to have fun, enjoy ourselves, and go home and we say, hey, we had church? Is that why we're here? So Moses ultimately did as the Lord asked. Think of the lives that he touched because of his obedience. Over 2 million Israelites under Moses eventually walked out of the land of Egypt. When we walk in obedience, we too will touch the lives of those around us. We got to be involved. We got to be involved. We got to fulfill our God-given purpose. You got to find out what that is and fulfill it. The church is not a place where we come together to just warm the pews. That is not the purpose for which the church was organized. The church is a place where we come in to equip ourselves for service. So the cost of obedience is nothing when compared with the cost of disobedience. Can't or won't. Christians need to be careful which one they choose. Although we often choose to say we can't, it really is a case of I won't. Is your excuse I can't or I won't? Let's face the facts. When we refuse to follow the Lord, it is because we won't. We disobey because we choose to, not because we have to. So listen to me. I'm going to close, but listen to me. I want to say these couple things, and then I'll close. God has a plan, but he never expects you to carry out the plan. I say, God has a plan, but he does not expect you to carry out the plan. He, God, is going to see that the plan is carried out. Will